It's now 10 minutes past 7 o'clock. The meeting is called to order. Mr. Clerk, please do roll call.
Mayor Joseph,
Here.
Councilwoman Keys,
Here.
Councilman Biedeman, Vice Mayor Desume,
Here.
Desume,
Here.
Councilman Galvin. Mayor, we have a quorum to proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael Tova, officer, North Miami Police Department, is going to lead us in Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. Place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you would please stay standing while Minister Edith Pascal from Potential Release Ministries is going to lead us in invocation.
I will bless the Lord at all time, and his praise continually be in my mouth. Father God, we just thank you. And Father God, you said in your word, in all our ways acknowledge you, and you shall direct our path. We pray, Father God, let your kingdom come, and let your will be done in this meeting. Take full control over this meeting. Touch each and every one. Bless the mayor and everyone working together with him, and everyone in this whole community. Let your peace rule and reign over this community. In Jesus' mighty name we have prayed. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. At this time, Mr. Manager, we're going to ask you if there is any addition, deletions, or amendments. Mr. Council.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor, upon review, where the legal department would like to pull tab L until the next meeting. We just have some revisions we need to make to that ordinance.
Do we like to pull tab L?
Yes.
Let the record reflect that tab L is being requested to be pulled.
1 second,
On-
Mr. Mayor. I think I had one deletion I'd like to be pulled, but I didn't have my agenda with me. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor. I can't find it.
No? So it is my understanding that the agenda is now set with tab L being removed, right?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. The next items on the agenda are a few presentations that we have, so the council members are gonna come down. So we may proceed with these presentations. The first presentation is going to be conducted by our Public Works Director.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Whistler Pierre Lewis, and I'm the Public Works Director. And today we have a full house with students and teachers from schools throughout the city of North Miami that participated in our poster contest. I'll just read a paragraph from the invitation for you. The city of North Miami invited students to participate in the annual Drop Savers Water Conservation Poster Contest sponsored by the Florida section of the American Water Works Association, also known as the FSAWWA. Students in grades K through 12 were encouraged to create a poster depicting a water conservation idea in slogan form, drawing form, or both. The purpose of the contest is to give students the opportunity to promote water awareness and the importance of water conservation in their daily routines. The posters to my left are their beautiful masterpieces. They, you can tell that they put some good effort into it. They're bright, colorful, and they each have slogans that promote water conservation. I'd also like to thank the teachers, the students, and parents that participated, and also city staff. Thank you, Solange. I understand you were critical in the whole process. And we'll take this time to present the students with their awards, which consist of a gift card here and also a certificate of recognition from the city of North Miami. The gift card is a whopping $50. So it pays to be creative and participate in water conservation. The first winner I want to call up is for Division 2, Moses Naylor, 3rd grade from Natural Bridge Elementary School. The next winner is Chris Caesar, 4th grade, also from Natural Bridge Elementary. Next for Division 4 is Natalie Morales, 8th grade from Thomas Jefferson Middle School. Miss Morales also won in 2014, so she is continuing the streak. Congratulations. Finally, we have for Division 5, Junette Rickman, a 9th grader from North Miami Senior High.
Well, the following recognition is geared toward the North Miami Public Works Department in honor of Conservation Awareness Month. The city, I don't know which one I can read better with. The city of North Miami honors our Public Works Department on the 18th anniversary of the establishment of Water Conservation Month in Florida. This department continues to increase awareness and the importance of water conservation within our community. Thank you very much, Mr. What's your last name again? Pierre Louis, for being a leader in water conservation in public works. Thank you very much. Now we have our councilwoman who's going to come forward and do the next presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for all for joining us this evening. It is with great pleasure that on the behalf of the mayor, the council members, and the residents of the city, we recognize two teams of the Odyssey of the Mind. The team consists of 14 talented students from the David Lawrence Jr. K-8 Center. Odyssey of the Mind is an international problem-solving competition that focuses on encouraging creativity and risk-taking. During the competition, each team will choose a detailed problem and begin to plan together and work on solving that particular problem. The students formulate a solution and present that solution in the form of an 8-minute dramatic skit to a panel of judges who then interview and score them on many different aspects of the performance, including creativity and originality. For the first time, both Division I and Division II teams won top positions and will advance to the World Finals competition taking place May 24th in Iowa. At this time, I would like to invite all the students to come up and be recognized. Thank you. They're led by their coaches, Ms. Janet, I hope the coaches are coming up, Ms. Janet Kelly, Ms. Carol Bregman, and Ms. Christy Reinhardt, and Principal Bernard Osborne, to receive the certificates of recognition for their hard work and accomplishment. While we're all getting lined up for pictures, Team 1, the coach is Janet Kelly. The students are Kennedy Kelly, Kaylee Reinhardt, Skylar Augusta, Xavier Orr, Caleb Berman, Thomas Gandy, and Peter Nicholas. Team 2 coaches Carol Bregman and Christy Reinhardt. The students are Kira Reinhardt, Kalindi Gassin, Owen Shabani, Taj Lesmarie, Scott Gandy, Shay Berman, and Jacob Sherman. So congratulations, I'm very proud of you all. Thank you.
Would you like to put the certificates in the pictures? Division 1 and 2, District 1 and 2.
Now, part of the requirements for those awards are that the parents and students have to stay until the end of the meeting. And it may last until 11 o'clock. We also have in our midst our state rep, Attorney Joe Geller. I believe you have a long presentation for us tonight. No?
No, a short presentation. I'd like to congratulate all the winners. Very nicely done. And hopefully those few remaining after they leave will be glad to hear about what our legislature's been up to. So thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, Mr. Manager, Mr. Assistant Manager, Mr. Clerk, Mr. Attorney, and citizens. I'm Joe Geller, and I do have the privilege of representing about half of our city in Tallahassee in the state legislature. So our session having concluded early this year, we started in January and finished in March. Instead of starting in March and ending in May, I would like to give you a brief report on some of the things that were done. You may all recall that 2015 was a very difficult year in Tallahassee, including having my body, the House, adjourn early. The budget wasn't done. We had to come back in special session. We're up there with reapportionment and others, 26 weeks in total that the legislature was there. But 2016 was a much better year, and I'm happy to report there were some things that actually got done, and that's not always the case in Tallahassee. So let's start by talking about health care. We still have not expanded Medicaid, which is the #1 issue, I think, facing this state. It's a real problem. We have millions of people who are uninsured, and the whole system of the Affordable Care Act is designed to encourage it. Most of the costs would be borne by the federal government. Notwithstanding that, there was some progress made on some related issues. For instance, a bill that has been batted around for years finally passed to give nurse practitioners and physician's assistants the authority to prescribe certain kinds of medications, including some controlled substances. So if you're laying there on the gurney, passing a kidney stone, in tremendous pain, and your doctor is, well, let's say maybe he's out on the golf course, I don't know. They can't reach him. That
if he's in council meeting.
that he could be there, but the nurse practitioner or physician's assistant that's given that shot of Demerol 1,000 times can help you out. We have such a healthcare crisis in our state and such a shortage of really quality healthcare practitioners like you, Mayor, that anything that expands that ability to provide service is a good thing, and this bill passed and it was long past due. I supported that. And also, we had a dramatic expansion of kid care this year, and many thousands more children in the state of Florida will now be eligible to receive benefits from kid care. Any way you look at it, those are good things, those are advances in terms of the provision of medical services and health care to the citizens of the state of Florida. Even though one still remains undone, at least we made some progress. In education, there was a lot of focus on these so-called school choice things. Some of that translates into support for private schools, which I think the state should not be doing. But some of it's for charter schools. Charter schools are a mixed bag. There are ones that are there strictly to serve the public, and I look right next door. The city of Aventura, for instance, has a municipally owned one. That's an example of a very good charter school. Not all are as good, but there was an attempt to take a significant portion of the funds that are used for capital outlay for building construction and divert that from from traditional public schools to charter schools, and that was reined in significantly. Some money will still be going, and that's not inappropriate, but there are going to be many more guidelines and appropriate regulations, so that was a good thing. And also in the field of education, I'm very pleased to report that I got a bill passed, and as a freshman Democrat, getting something through the legislature, dominated by Republicans, not that easy. It's my first one that made it all the way through. I had a bill passed out of the House last year. When the House adjourned early, it didn't go ahead. This is an important bill, frankly. It is an anti-bullying bill, and it's something that Senator Ring introduced in the Senate. I was the House sponsor. The Senate ultimately took our House bill. It went to the governor, and the governor has signed it. And so the children of our state, one of whom is here with me today, is my daughter, Michelle. Say hi to everybody, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Children have further protections now against bullying. There used to be the law that every school district had to have a bullying policy, and that's great. But a lot of them passed that policy and then stuck it on the shelf where it gathered dust. So under my bill, every school district is now required to review and update their bullying policy at least every 3 years. They can do it more often, but every 3 years they have to look at it, they have to update it, make sure it still works. And also, we've now made principals responsible to be sure that there is a procedure in place to report incidents of alleged bullying, and that the resources to combat bullying are now available and made available by the principals to people in their own schools. So I'm very proud of that. It got bipartisan support. It passed the House with, I think, 2 dissenting votes. The Senate passed it. It's now signed into law by the governor, and I'm happy that that's the case. And finally, on the field of education, there was a lot of talk about funding for education, and actually it did go up. Didn't go up as much as some people say, but there is one very significant thing. You know, sometimes the legislature passes tax cuts that are just ill-advised. Last year we did that. We passed this communication services tax cut back in 2015 that literally saves people on $100 worth of cell phone bill or cable TV bill 67 cents a month. 67 cents. I don't know what anybody does with that, but the problem is that because it applied to so many people, it blew a $400 million hole in our budget and all the things that we could have done with that money. So tax cuts are always a dicey issue in Tallahassee. This year, the governor proposed $1 billion in tax cuts, mostly for people who didn't need them, and the legislature said no. And those were rejected. The only thing that passed, a very modest package, most of which is targeted just at families to help with things like the back-to-school tax holiday. So we held the line, yet there was significant tax relief given in the field of education. There's something called required local effort, and those are property taxes that are levied on all homeowners to help pay for school funding, and they're required to be levied by local school boards. And it's important that we fund education, but those property taxes are a burden on local homeowners. This year, the legislature voted to cut the required local effort by $428 million, which is real significant tax relief for homeowners. But education in the state did not suffer as a result because the legislature filled that gap with statewide revenues. So we provided real property tax relief to homeowners, and yet the funding for education wasn't reduced because of that cut. it actually went up a modest amount, but still, for once, in the right direction. So I think that was the right thing to do, more money for education, and still tax relief for local homeowners. On the environment, last year, again, a tremendous failure. The people of the state spoke loudly in passing Amendment 1, and last year the legislature didn't fund it at all. But that changed this year. That changed in this budget. The legislature has committed for recurring funds, a dedicated set-aside out of Amendment 1 monies, $200 million a year, every year, to help protect the Everglades, and another $50 million a year, every year, to help protect our natural springs in the state of Florida. That's $250 million, not just this year, but every year. We could do more. We should do more. I hope we will. But this year, a real start was made in honoring the intent of voters who voted in favor of Amendment 1, and that will help to make this state and our water quality in particular better and safer. And on that same field, in terms of some things that happened were good things and some bad things were stopped, the bill that would have expanded so-called fracking, it's not a bad word, that's what they call it, it's short for fracturing. Fracturing was defeated in the legislature. The bill that would have expanded it was stopped dead, and that was also a victory for water quality. So on terms of our scorecard on the environment, we need to do more with Amendment 1 money, but at least this year we took some steps in the right direction and kept some bad things from happening. In terms of justice and our criminal justice system in particular, one thing that happened was these horrible, terrible gun bills. The bill that would have made Florida like Dodge City, with everybody walking around packing heat visibly and maybe drawdowns on our streets. Open carry was defeated, and the bills that would have allowed guns on our college campuses and even on our public schools to become much more widespread were also defeated. Those were stopped. I'm against the expansion of these weapons. We need to do something to rein it in. That was a real step forward. Unfortunately, my bill, which would have limited the size of these magazines to 10, they have these magazines now that are, we had one amendment that would have even maybe raised it to 17, but they've got ones with 30 and 50 and 100. And that's what these mass shootings seem to feature, people with these oversized magazines. There's just no need for those. They're not used by hunters. They're not really used by anybody except with the intention of trying to kill people. And my bill to rein that in, unfortunately, did not progress very far in this year's legislature, but we're going to try that one again next year. Also on the death penalty, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down Florida's death penalty, and we had to, it was a need to put something in place. Now, I'm an opponent to the death penalty. I think it's just wrong. I'm just opposed to it. But I have to say that what they came up with, although I'd rather we didn't have a death penalty, certainly the law now is better than it was. It now removes the ability of judges to override jury recommendations of mercy. Instead of a bare majority being required, it now requires 10 out of the 12 jurors to recommend it. Should be unanimous like most states, but 10 is certainly better than 7. And maybe most importantly, when finding aggravating factors to justify the imposition of a sentence of death, that one does require a unanimous agreement from the jury on not only that there is an aggravating factor, but what it is. I think that one is going to really have some impact. So I'm glad we have a better and fairer application than we did, although, again, I'd prefer that we have none at all. Also on the issue of criminal justice, and I'm particularly happy, my colleague, Representative Chevron Jones, was successful in getting a bill passed, House Bill 93, that will set minimum standards on the use of police body cameras and really help to expand the use of body cameras. I think this is really a great thing. You know, we have so many incidents where there have been just horrible tragedies reported. And I think the greatest thing about this is that it will be fair. If a police officer, and most of them do their jobs well, but if one does something that he shouldn't, if one does the wrong thing, that body camera will capture it. And by the way, if there's a false accusation against a police officer, cuts the same way. The video will defend the officer from false accusations. So what this means is we'll have the truth, we'll have more facts. A very good bill, and I'm happy to see that that happened. One last bill before a final comment is on elections. And we've seen over the last few years, and not accidentally, a tremendous attempt at voter suppression. People who can't otherwise win elections try to keep people from being able to vote. That's why we've seen some of these long lines. They're not, in large measure, they have not been accidental. That's deliberate and it's procured. Well, this year we actually took a step in the other direction. Now, I think voter ID laws are unnecessary. The actual provable incidence of so-called voter impersonation at the polls is almost negligible. It's practically a margin of error. Nonetheless, the state has a law that requires voter ID, but this year a bill passed that will dramatically increase the kinds of ID that can be presented to any federal, state, or local identification that's produced. All those things like student ID if you're at a state school, veterans cards, government ID cards, employee ID cards, all of these will now be acceptable at the polls. So I'd rather we did away with voter ID, but at least this law will make it easier for people to exercise their franchise, and at least that's a move in the right direction. So the last thing I want to mention to you is just our budget. I voted against last year's budget. Most Democrats did. There are so many things that we need to address that have been unaddressed. This year was a bit of a different story. Last year, the governor wielded an unprecedented number of vetoes and took out maybe a few bad projects, but an awful lot of good ones. This year, the legislature actually acted across party lines in coming up with a budget. Now, I won't tell you that Democrats were in the driver's seat on it, but we were heard. When the final budget came before the State House, it passed 119 to 1. And by the way, the one was not a Democrat who still was unhappy. It happened to have been a Tea Party Republican from Melbourne who votes against everything. 119 to 1, and it passed 40 to nothing in the state Senate. Now, that's a statement, and in fact, it was a statement to our governor that the legislature was prepared to come back and override vetoes if he leaned too hard on that veto pen, and he didn't. And he came back and only vetoed something like half of what was done last year. Our House Democratic leader, the outgoing leader, Mark Pafford from Palm Beach, who has been in the legislature in the State House for 8 years, and he said this is the first time in 8 years he'd voted for a budget. First time. Because there were some things done, such as the overhaul of mental health facilities. So finally, we're going to have a coordinated system for the treatment of the mentally ill. It's called No Wrong Door, and wherever you impact that system, I should mention the work of our own Dade County Judge Steve Leifman in helping to bring that about. Wherever you impact the system, they will refer you to the right place to be, and we're beginning to turn our backs on warehousing mentally ill people in our prisons and our jails, and getting them help and treatment, and the same for people with substance abuse problems. We have a long way to go with our state budget, but in terms of providing a social service net, this budget at least started moving in the right direction, not only on mental health, but on a range of things like education, like other social service issues, such that the Democrats, for once, were comfortable in joining across party lines. I think that was a real step forward. We hope to build on that progress next year. But all in all, I have to say that compared to what we went through last year, this year's session was better. It moved in the right direction. Real progress was made. Bipartisanship was shown on a number of issues, not on all of them. And all in all, I think it was a pretty successful session. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them. If not, I thank you for your patience.
The only question I have is about the Medicaid expansion. I know the jury is still out on that, of course. We don't know what the federal government might end up doing in the near or long-term future. But the question is, can you consider the LIP program, the low-income pool, being a true substitute for that? Because I understand the Senate, came up with a proposition, with some kind of proposal, as well as ACA, and it doesn't cover everything. There's still a lot of problems with people being covered, and a lot of the medical providers don't get fully compensated, for certain services that they render. And where are we with the LIP program? I mean, is it something that is really being worked on?
You hit the nail right on the head, Mayor, frankly. The LIP program is the heart of the problem. The LIP program is being phased out of existence. And it may not be completely gone yet next year, but compared, this year's funding for LIP was, I think, half of what last year's was, and next year's will be certainly much less. And that program is being eliminated. Mm-hmm. They're not doing it all at once because of the problem, but LIP is no more. And it's up to us to find a way to fill that gap, and hopefully not just by taxing our own citizens. The federal government is willing to pay 100% of the costs of Medicaid expansion for the first few years, and even then, as it begins to come down, the federal portion comes down all the way eventually to 93%. To say that we're worried we can't pay that additional 7%, to me, is ridiculous. Yet last year, it's the issue that brought the legislature to a halt. And this year, despite the efforts of the Democrats, it was not much considered. Now, maybe, depending on the results of the elections, if we come back with a legislature whose composition is very different next year, maybe we'll see something else. But there is not another solution that any of us have seen to a looming problem that next year, and even more so the following year, has the potential to cost this state dearly, when the answer is right there. And there's no good reason not to accept these federal funds that, after all, we've paid to Tallahassee, to Washington with our own taxes. I still think that's the #1 issue in the state, and we're going to be coming back next year and pushing it, because the dollars don't just affect health care. The money that would come into this state to increase our budget would enable us to spend more money on senior citizen services, on waiting lists, on food for the hungry, on mental health, on education, on all kinds of needs. And they all trace back to this one problem. So, yes, you've hit the nail on the head. We're going to try again as hard as we can next year.
We have to. Thank you very much. That was a very good presentation.
Thank you all very much, and have a good evening.
We will move with the agenda to, I think, consent, no, city events.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, members of the public. Cassandra Timothy, Public Information Specialist, and I have the pleasure of sharing all of the exciting events and programs coming up in the city of North Miami. Community-based organizations, CBOs, nonprofit organizations, and other agencies are invited to attend the 2016-2017 Community Development Block Grant How to Apply workshop on Wednesday, April 27th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the North Miami Police Department. Requests for proposals must be submitted by Friday, May 6th to the Community Development Office. Come out on Saturday, April 30th, beginning at 11 a.m. to the 14th Annual Family and Community Together FAC Festival, taking place in the Mocha Plaza. With the mission to make North Miami a safer place to live, work, and play, the FAC Festival is both a family fun event and educational. Admission is free. Join the North Miami Police Department as they remember fallen officers who lost their lives while serving and protecting our North Miami community. On Tuesday, May 3rd, in front of the police station. The memorial ceremony begins at 9 a.m. North Miami residents and business owners are also invited to attend and participate in public discussions to prioritize the programs and activities eligible for program funding in the proposed 2016-2017 Annual Action Plan, a component of the 2015-2019 Consolidated Plan that identifies resources and strategies to assist in meeting the housing and community development needs in the city. Join the North Miami Community Planning and Development Department on Wednesday, May 4th at the Joe Seligson Center and Thursday, May 5th at the Griffin Community Center from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Join Vice Mayor Alex Desilme and the Southeastern Conference of Seventh-day Adventists for an interfaith breakfast in honor of National Day of Prayer on Thursday, May 5th at 8 a.m. inside the Joe Seligson Center. Last but definitely not least, the City of North Miami is kicking off Haitian Heritage Month on Friday, May 6th, with the photography and exhibit opening of Haiti, Too Rich to Be Poor by Seek.
Is it 6th or 5th?
The Friday, May 6th. Friday.
Oh. I have 5th on my mind.
Oh. Friday, May 6th.
I don't know.
Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, it's Cinco de Mayo.
Mayo is on
I'm thinking of Corona.
Yeah. But no, we're kicking off Haitian Heritage Month on Friday, May 6th at the North Miami Public Library. The opening reception begins at 6 p.m. Zeke's artwork will be on display during the month of May at the library. More events for Haitian Heritage Month are currently underway. Stay tuned by watching our free governmental programming, NoMe TV, available 24 hours a day through the city's website, www.northmiamifl.gov, like the City of North Miami on Facebook, follow @NoMe News on Twitter, and download the My NoMe mobile app. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Motion to approve consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Councilwoman Keys to approve the consent agenda. That motion was seconded by Councilman Galvin. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Item passes with a 4-1 vote. Tab I. Proposed resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, authorizing the city manager to approve a first amendment to professional services agreement between the city of North Miami and E-Science Incorporated to provide additional environmental engineering and consulting services in connection with the former Rux Park Pioneer Gardens to address the Miami-Dade County Department of Regulatory and Economic Resources Site Assessment Program Report Addendum for a term of 2 months at a cost not to exceed $56,000 in accordance with the terms, conditions, and specifications contained in the request for qualifications number 12-14-15, continuing architectural and engineering services, providing for an effective date and for all other purposes.
Anything from staff? No?
To the mayor. Mayor and council, this item is a continuation of the services being provided by E-Science. We've been preparing a environmental study of the Rux Park issue, I guess, for the past several years. They've come back, Durham has come back and asked us to do some additional testing in that area so we can finalize the report so we can move forward with the redevelopment of the property. So we're asking that you support this item at this time.
Thank you. Public hearing is now open on the item. Anyone who wishes to be heard on this item, please come forward now, and I see no one coming. So public hearing is now closed. Members of the council, comment, questions, concerns? If not, Mr. Clerk?
Move approval.
I have a motion made by Councilman Galvin to approve tab I. That motion was then seconded by Councilman Bieneme. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item passes with a 5-0 vote. Tab J. Proposed resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, approving the attached waiver of plate for the approximately 18,234 square feet parcel located at 821 Northeast 144th Street, North Miami, Florida 33161, with Miami-Dade folio number 06-2219-006-0380 in accordance with Article 3, Division 8, Section 3-802 of the City of North Miami Code of Ordinances, Land Development Regulations, and Chapter 28, Section 28-7B of the Miami-Dade County Code of Ordinances in order to subdivide said parcel into 2 individually plated single-family lots measuring 66 feet by 138 feet each, providing for an effective date and for all other purposes.
Thank you. For the record, Tanya Wilson Chizio with Community Planning and Development. I'll read the staff recommendation into the record. Staff is requesting that the Mayor and Council adopt the proposed resolution approving with conditions the proposed waiver of plat to subdivide the property located at 821 Northeast 144th Street into 2 individually platted single-family lots. The property itself consists of 18,234 square feet in size. Applicant is requesting for that parcel to be subdivided into 2 individual single-family lots. Once the waiver of plat, the resolution has been adopted by the council, then procedurally it has to be transmitted to Miami-Dade County for final approval. The applicant is here and wishes to speak on the item at this time.
George Lott on behalf of the applicant. We ask that the application be approved. It will serve the public interest. The development will be in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. It was an abandoned house purchased from the bank out of foreclosure. That will be remodeled. The portion will be demolished so that a new house next door can be built. So we'll be increasing not only the tax base, but I think it will improve the neighborhood.
Anyone from the public wants to come forward and be heard? I see no one coming. My first question, is there any violation issued to that?
There is a fine issue that's
I'm asking staff.
That will be.
I'm asking staff.
Pending violation, I'd have to defer to the code enforcement staff to see if there's any open violations that are pending on that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We checked the property this afternoon, actually, and there were a few violations that we had opened when we went out there probably about a month and a half ago for some trash and some other items. Those violations were closed because the applicant did remove some of the trash, and they are in the process with the building department of pulling demolition permits. So the other violations that were opened are now pending the pulling of the building permit for the demolition. So depending on what happens with the permit, and the building official may be able to comment on it further, if the permits are granted for the demolition and the property is demoed, then there would be no violations there. I believe one of the conditions placed upon them is that they need to put a construction fence around the building to segregate it from the neighborhood.
So why isn't there a violation for that?
Because they're in the building, they're in the permit process, and if they're in the permit process, there will be a violation if it is not put up within a reasonable amount of time.
What if tonight two kids go in there and one of them get injured? Who are they going to sue, the city or the property owner?
The property owner.
Yeah, but we are aware of the potential.
Just like any violation, we have to allow a reasonable amount of time for the property owner to take action. And if the
I
fence,
went there 2 months ago.
and the fence doesn't go up,
I went there 2 months ago. How long does it take to put up a fence? It only takes 5 minutes for one kid to go in there and get injured or even get killed.
Mayor, we understand your concern. We'll work with the building official and the property owner to ensure that fence gets put up immediately. And the applicant's right here shaking his head, so I believe the fence will be put up immediately.
Well, I don't think I can vote yes on this item until these items are taken care of.
Mr. Mayor, I think my concern, we are one city, and it seems like two departments are making different recommendations. One department asking us to approve this, and another department, the building department, deny a permit and of a permit to demolish and remove the debris on the property. I don't understand how come you asked us to approve this when today the building department didn't approve.
Councilman, they're separate they're separate issues. One issue is a permit issue to demolish the structure that is sitting there. The other issue before you is the waiver of plot.
I understand that, but
to divide it into
they
two
need
lots.
to be in compliance with all the code before we can authorize that.
Well, Your Honor, that's
It's two
simply not
different
true.
issues.
That is a separate issue.
We are talking to staff at this time, please. As a matter of fact, you may be seated until we allow you to speak again.
Yeah, Steve Pizzolo, building official for the city through the manager. The permits, they put in a package for the permits, which was all inclusive. The permits were sent back, were rejected for comments on the rebuild portion of the process. But they were informed, the builder was informed today that he needed to immediately put up a construction fence.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I will comment that, and we check staff recommendation until they're in compliance with all the city regulation.
We can have public hearing
recommendation.
or,
I did open. Public hearing is closed.
okay.
Mayor, if I may address
Go ahead.
the council. You obviously have the right to ask any questions you want of the property owner and their representative. Obviously, if there's issues with the property, you can do that. The issue before you tonight is a waiver of plat, and those issues, according to your code section, which I'm looking at right now, 3-802, they don't address those issues there. So you can address them, but they shouldn't be the basis for your decision.
Oh, I know, but I am just not willing to grant anything to any property owner who's in violation of our codes, because we do have a lot of kids. As a matter of fact, you know what I found in front of that place? I went with the manager, along with the CP&D manager, and so we found condoms in the perimeter of the house, and it's a wide open field with a couple of walls, and that are just standing there, and with any we enter in the hurricane season. I mean, any wind that come in will blow these walls away, and we have a lot of debris that can impinge upon neighboring properties. It's a danger. So this is a city. I mean, this is not just anywhere. This is the United States of America. We are responsible as a council to ask the property owners, to really conduct themselves, in a responsible manner before we can approve anything. So as a matter of fact, I would recommend the code enforcement people to go out there and issue some violations for the things that need to be fixed. That's my recommendation.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, first question to our attorney is, I know this is a separate issue of issuing a waiver of plat, but is a property owner automatically entitled? I mean, I believe the waiver of plat should be issued at some point. There's no question, I'm not against that, but do they have this right if their property is in violation to get
what I'm trying to make clear is that the two subjects are separate.
So you can't hold up somebody's waiver even though a property might be in violation?
You shouldn't.
You shouldn't.
You should take each item separately.
Okay.
Again, you can address all the issues that you're addressing, and you can order code enforcement to do whatever you want to but I would keep those issues separate.
Okay. And then I'd like to address a couple issues. One, this property, with staff, all that was gonna be done was the piece of garage was gonna be chopped off to make room, so we didn't have a, violation of the setbacks. And it turns out that the house was practically demolished. I've got pictures of it, I've sat out there. This is a
I think I
1940.
even have pictures.
This is a 1946 frame house. I've looked at it. I'm just really concerned. I
It's really
believe,
bad.
now I've spoke to the building official, I believe you have the right to build it, but it is in the flood zone. So I'm just saying that I'm gonna be asking our building official to be extremely careful with this. The property has to be raised to the proper elevation. You've got walls that are just half wood crumbling, there's no roof. You've gotta put a roof on these walls that are like, I mean, it's incredible, all new electric. I just don't understand why the house just isn't being bulldozed and start from scratch to give us two nice new houses in our neighborhood. I just feel sorry for someone moving into that house that, I mean, can you really shore up those walls and make that structurally sound? So that's my concern. If I had the ability, I would say, I would give you a waiver of plat subject to you tearing down the house. I know I can't do that, so I won't. But really concerned about this house. It really shouldn't be, I mean, and you're gonna have to raise the floors. So, I mean, I think it's crazy that you're doing that, but it's your property. You can do what you want with. But our code enforcement, our building department will be very strict in watching it.
Can I make a motion? You go.
No, I was gonna make a suggestion.
You want to have him
to table
projected?
the item.
No, that's what I was gonna do. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
for the public.
May I address?
Mr. Mayor, can,
He-
no, Mr. Mayor, can I make a motion to table the item until, and, code enforcement and the building department feel comfortable on moving forward
Yeah,
with the item?
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was being informed of something by the deputy manager at the moment the motion was being made. May I ask that the motion be restated so that I might hear it?
Motion to
Oh,
table,
to
the-
table the item until,
basically.
and, the building department and code enforcement are comfortable with, the property.
I'll
And
second.
they're in compliance with everything.
I'll second the
Before we
motion
move
to.
It was seconded.
I
The
already-
motion, yeah, the motion was already, it's simply a motion to table the item. That motion was seconded by Mayor Joseph. And so, since this is in fact a resolution, all in favor?
Can we get,
What,
Hmm?
may I address the council before the vote?
and I'd like an opinion from our attorney whether that's something we should be doing.
It's remove the, table
You
the
can't tell
item.
us how to vote. I mean, the attorney, I mean,
No, he can give me a legal opinion as whether we should be doing.
But he
it.
did, he just did.
If we're gonna follow Robert's Rules of Orders, a motion to continue takes precedence over everything else that might come after. So a motion to continue, once made
Yeah.
and seconded, stops all further discussion until that vote is taken.
Correct. Thank you.
17 years up here, guys. Yeah.
Okay, so we do have a motion. Motion was made by Councilman Benamy. That motion was seconded by Mayor Joseph Smith. And that's the motion to table this item. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Item passes with a 4-1 vote. Tab K. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Through the mayor, we just were informed that Channel 77 went down. We had an issue earlier today. It was addressed, so I guess IT is addressing the issue now. So I'm letting you know that while we're recording the broadcast to
even the live stream
The
on
live
the
sh-
internet. as well?
I'd have to check to see.
No, just the TV.
Just the
The
TV?
TV. You think it's all down?
It's all down?
Live stream is working.
Okay.
So I just wanted to let you know that.
Okay, it's just the TV.
Back
Just
up
the
or-
residents can
No,
see it.
live stream is working, but the channel broadcast is down right now.
Okay.
Tab K, proposed ordinance, second reading of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, adopting the evaluation and appraisal-based amendments to the city of North Miami comprehensive plan in accordance with the requirements of Rule 73C-49, Florida Administrative Code, and Section 163.3191, Florida statutes, amending the future land use, transportation, housing, infrastructure, coastal management, conservation, parks and recreation, intergovernmental coordination, economic development, public school facilities, and capital improvements elements of the North Miami Comprehensive Plan, adding a climate change element to the North Miami Comprehensive Plan, providing for annual update to the capital improvements element specific to capital improvement schedule, providing for data and analysis, supporting adoption of goals, objectives, and policies of the elements, providing for transmittal and subsequent adoption of amendments, additions, and deletions to the goals, objectives, and policies of the elements, providing for transmittal of such proposed amendments to the State Land Planning Agency for review in accordance with Section 163.3184, subparagraph 4, Florida statutes, providing for repeal, conflict, severability, codification, and for an effective date. And that was tab K.
Thank you. For the record again, Tanya Wilson Toujours with Community Planning and Development. This is the second reading for the comprehensive plan. I'll read the staff recommendation into the record. Staff is requesting that the mayor and council adopt the proposed ordinance incorporating the objection, recommendation, and comments in the city of North Miami's proposed air-based comprehensive plan amendment, and that's 15-2R assigned by the state, and transmit said amendment to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, the State Land Planning Agency, and all other applicable agencies as required by Rule Chapter 73C 49, Florida Administrative Code, Section 163.3191, and also Section 163.3184 of the Florida statutes. The last time this came before the council for first reading was back in October of 2015. The transmittal has since been submitted to the state. The state has provided comments on the city's draft goals, objectives, and policies, as well as the future land use map. We have the consultant team that's here this evening, Jeff Cadens and Michelle Melgren, has prepared a presentation for the mayor and council as well as members of the public to go through the objections, recommendation, and comments as issued by the state, and also the city's response in order to have those recommendations incorporated into the comprehensive plan, and a second submittal for additional review by the state agency. So I'll allow our presenter to come forward, Jeff Cadens, at this time to walk you through the presentation.
Jeff Cadens has deferred to Michelle Melgren. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am Michelle Melgren, the principal of the Melgren Planning Group, and with me here this evening, as you know, is Jeff Cadens, and he's the managing principal of the firm. As Ms. Wilson said, this is the second reading for adoption of the evaluation and appraisal report. We have a very brief presentation. I'm just going to zip through it quickly and then talk for a few moments about the objections, recommendations, and comments letter we got from the state. That's also known as the ORC, or we call it the ORC report. So briefly, you know that we're required every 7 years to update the comprehensive plan. You've seen this presentation before. We have accomplished that consistent with Florida state statute requirements. We adjust the changes to state law as required by state statute, and in addition added an economic development element and updated the transportation element and added a climate change element. We had a series of public workshops and public input, as you recall, starting in February of 2015 and continuing throughout the summer of 2015. At one point there was a joint workshop. And then in the fall of 2015, this council met and wanted some additional changes made to the map, as you may recall, adding some additional density and intensity in areas of the city to encourage and invite redevelopment into the city of North Miami, and we accomplished those changes as directed. We didn't transmit at that time, as I said, but subsequently we did on October 13th. And on December, we got this ORC report, this objections, recommendations, and comments, and I'm going to talk just briefly about what that is. So The Department of Economic Opportunity, which is the state land planning agency, reviews the comprehensive plan, and they issue this ORC report. And it's divided into 3 sections. Objections, which the city must address, and we had 6 objections. I'll get to those in just a moment. And then they provide recommendations and comments, and the city, at its discretion, may or may not address those, but they are comments and suggestions that the DEO issues. So what we got for the objections, there were 6 of them. The first 5 were as a result of the fact that there was new staff at the Department of Economic Opportunity, and they had no understanding whatsoever of the bonus units that we had devised and had adopted by the state some 10 years ago. So subsequent to receiving the ORC report, we have worked closely with Adam Biblow, who is the state reviewer at DEO, to help him and his colleagues understand exactly what the city of North Miami has done and what they're trying to achieve, and he has indicated now that he has an understanding that the DEO is all right with that. The 6th objection that we got in this ORC report was to address perils of flood, and we hadn't addressed that simply because of this. We started this process in December of 2014. The peril of flood legislation did not occur until later in 2015. So we were already well into this process before the legislature even adopted these requirements. Nevertheless, they were adopted. We worked closely with the Department of Economic Opportunity. We have incorporated, at their suggestion, they gave us language, some simple language to address their concerns, to address the peril of flood, and that has been accomplished as well. With regard to the recommendations and comments, they had several pages of those. I'll be very candid with you. I had a very frank discussion with Mr. Biblow at the DEO. Many of these comments were a matter of grammar, a preference for using a certain word. They were nitpicky, for lack of a better word description. And I told him, I said, what are all of these? And he said, well, they're minor. They don't really count. It doesn't matter. And I said to him, and Ms. Sejour was on the phone and heard me, I said, when you issue an ORC report and you have that many recommendations and comments, I said citizens and elected bodies don't necessarily read all of the recommendations and comments. They just see that there are several pages of them, and it causes them great consternation. And Mr. Biblow could not fall over himself enough to apologize for that. Nevertheless, having said that, we examined all of the recommendations and comments, very minor in nature, and have incorporated very minor changes to the plan, changing the will to shall or the might to may and what have you, to address all of those comments as well. We believe in working with the DEO that we have satisfied their concerns that were expressed in the ORC report, and now this comprehensive plan is before you for second and final reading, so that we can finalize this process, distribute the final copies to the state and other reviewing agencies, and the city can move forward with its newly adopted comprehensive plan. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Well, I took the time and I read the objections and the recommendations and so forth, and the response from staff. So I guess everything is okay, and I understand if we're not just voting on the response, on the ORC response, so we're voting on the entire, for the second time to resubmit it, right?
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay.
Questions?
Go ahead.
When is the public hearing?
Do they have the ORC response? Do they have a copy of it? I know, but does the public have a copy of the ORC response?
It's online.
Okay. The item is open to the public now for questions or comments. Okay. Public hearing is closed.
Thank you. A few items in the comp plan that we can't really vote on it exactly the way it is. There's several references to dates. One is, we're supposed to bring up, one is a date that we're going to have our TOD defined by June of 2016, which is not going to happen. There's some other dates, like the LDRs would be completed by September of 2016. What I would like to see in this comp plan, I don't think is a major change for us with voting, but I think any reference to our LDRs and dates should reference a date when the plan is finally approved and passed. So 12 months from the date it's passed, as opposed to giving us a date, and we have another date in there. I mean, there's a lot of dates. I didn't have enough time to really do it, but go through it twice with all the dates. But there's another date of December 16, which not realistic, so we don't need to put those in. The other date that concerns me is the TOD, that we're going to define our TOD by June 2016. I think what we had talked about when we first discussed the comp plan, finally when we voted on it, is we would not determine what the where the TOD would be until we know if and where we're going to have a train station. So since we don't know yet, number one, if we're going to absolutely have one, and if we have one, we don't have a spot picked out yet, so that the TOD is a circle with the center at the train station. So I think we should also put a date that will have a TOD 3 to 6 months after we are certain we are going to have a train station where it's going to be located. And also, I mean, we need to mention there was a little bit of a typo on the future land use map with regard to the NRO. And
We have fixed that.
so, but I think up here we need, council needs to know that because that's not what was published and shown online. So I think we need to have that on record that it will be fixed as we voted on it last time. Thank you.
Councilmember, that the map was re-uploaded in its corrected form, and I will.
I have a copy.
Okay, and it's on the record.
Councilwoman, through the mayor, staff did discuss the dates, and all those will be changed, because obviously some of those dates we won't be able to meet based on when they were approved.
Okay.
So that'll be done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? We need now a motion to approve the comp plan, right? As amended, right, Mr. Zhu? That's what the motion will be?
Yes,
To
to accept
approve-
the recommendation
to accept
of the
the
ORC report and the
recommendation.
response.
Okay, so I move to do that, to accept the recommendations to be included in the
With the amendments.
comp plan.
I second.
I have a motion made by Mayor Smith Joseph to approve tab K as amended. That motion was seconded by Vice Mayor DeZume. This is in fact an ordinance, so I would need a roll call vote. Councilman Galvin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilwoman Keys, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilman Bieneme?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeZume?
Yes.
Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
Item passes with a 5-0 vote.
You working on it.
Thank you. Tabel?
Tab L was removed from the agenda, Mayor.
Oh, it was removed. Okay, so
Motion to adjourn, no?
well, we still have to do public citizen forum. Citizen forum is now open for anyone who has any comment or questions.